Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Podcast. Today I am joined by James Lawrence, aka the Iron Cowboy. You are a world-renowned endurance athlete, speaker, and author. And many of our listeners will know you from the documentary The Iron Cowboy, which aired around your successful attempt to complete 50 Ironman distance triathlons in 50 days across 50 states. It was a world record at the time, but one you subsequently broke in 2021 with a massive 100 Ironman distance triathlons in 100 days. You've got a new book out, Iron Hope, Lessons from Conquering the Impossible. Before we start, James, I wondered if you could give me your sort of potted biography. How did you get here? Where did it all start?
Oh my gosh. A lot of people see the headline, right? They see the 50 or the 100 and they're like, dude's different, gifted, got some type of gene, spider bite happened to him. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I joke all the time with my kids because after the 50, they're like, oh, we can't do that because you have this thing. And I was like, no, man, I'm like you, you're like me, we're just normal. And I went and got genetically tested and did all these different crazy things. And the test came back and they were like, sorry, bro, you're an average white Canadian. and so it's just kind of this like, yeah, no, I am just like you. And actually my journey started, my wife, I grew up in Canada. I moved to the States. Thanksgiving's huge in the United States. And my wife said, hey, let's go run this 4-mile fun run. And I'm like, that sounds stupid. And we went and ran it and I totally suffered through it. And through that entire process of like, whoa, what 4 miles shouldn't have been hard. She was like, hey, I just signed you up for the Salt Lake City Marathon. Go figure that out. And I was like, whoa, that was a big jump. And then we found triathlon. We got in together. We loved the community and then just started doing all the sprints and the Olympics and just had so much fun doing it. And then we just progressed through the sport over time. But man, it was a very, very humbling beginning to this journey.
The new book, Iron Hope, how did it come to life? When did you know you needed to write this book?
Yeah. So after the 50, we wrote a book called Redefining Impossible. And it was kind of a autobiography of our family and also those 50 days. It was very storytelling. And then I got into the speaking circuit. Just people craved the story on how we did that. And I knew, the pandemic hit and then I wanted to double what we did and do it better. And so we did the Conquer 100. And through the years between the 50 and the 100, I was doing tons of speaking and a lot of questions. Number one question I got was, how do I become more mentally tough? And then the other thing I recognized was our team obviously decides to do these challenges and we suffer intentionally. And there's a lot of people out there dealing with abuse and addiction and terminal illness and life in general that's very, very challenging at times. And we go through these peaks and valleys. And I just recognized that people had lost hope and they were gaining strength and hope through our teams willing to suffer intentionally where they were dealing with things that they weren't choosing to suffer through. And we were getting tons of emails and letters and things saying, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful you decided to do one more day because it gave us hope to show up one more day on our journey. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And so it was kind of like this ping pong game of inspiration and hope, them to me and me to them and back and forth. And then I was like, I have to put this journey and a lot of the lessons that we learned over the past 20 years into this to continue to give and spread that message of hope. Because I believe hope is life. One of my favorite books real quick is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And it's a story about when he was in the concentration camps and he could tell the moment that somebody lost hope because they died. And it's about the conversations that we have with our head and we do kind of a deep dive on that kind of stuff in the book.
Talk to me about motivation. What does that word mean to you?
It's a fleeting thought or possible spark. I'm in the motivational speaking space now. I never thought this is what I'd be. I'm a total introvert, but I've actually really enjoyed my time on stages around the world. It's been crazy. Over the past 10 years, I've spoken in 57 countries, which was mind-blowing to me. I didn't even think that was a thing. And I'm in this motivational category and I don't like it because I believe I'm an empowering speaker. And I think motivation can be that spark that we get, the turn of the key if you hear somebody or listen to or watch something and you're like, you get that feeling, you get fired up, that's motivation. But when you wake up every single day, that spark isn't there and you have to create it yourself. And I hope that our story doesn't motivate you, it empowers you. And to me, if you're empowered, you take an action and you do something. And then over time, the more you do something, you develop that discipline, because there's a gap between motivation and over here, the goal or accomplishment or the where we're trying to get. And that gap thing in the middle is discipline. And what's crazy is it's this like word that nobody knows how to do. Like, you're not born with insane amounts of discipline. And the gap between motivation and success is that discipline, but it's the action that you take in between that. And that's how you develop that discipline through systems and consistency and all the things and team and having experiences. All the way back to the original question is, how do I become more mentally tough? Through having those experiences that create the discipline. That was a very complex answer but on the surface, it's very simple. But once you break it down, there's a lot of pieces to it.
You talk in the book about the bag of whys. How does that fit in here? Where does the bag of whys fit into this motivation,
Yeah, man.
discipline, goal spectrum?
Yeah, I love the bag of whys. We share a very impactful moment on the 100 where I was in a very violent bike accident, knocked unconscious, laying in the middle of the road. And, a lot of people have a reason they're doing something. And that reason is strong enough when you're in a situation and things get a little bit sticky or difficult. And you're like, I know why I'm doing this. And you can push through that. But when you're knocked unconscious, laying in the middle of the road, and you've got 41 more Ironmans to do, your one why that you chose is typically not going to be good enough. And so you have to be armed with a bag full of whys, and lots of them. You're going to reach in there and pull one out and go, yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to put that there. And then it's still not good enough for me to get back on my bike. And then you reach in your bag and you pull out another one, and now you start stacking these whys. And all of a sudden now you've realized your purpose. And that's the difference, because there's these small reasons that you're doing stuff, but then there's the purpose. And that's the overarching thing. And that's the bag of whys that goes into that.
How do you kind of advise people to figure out those whys for themselves? Are there any exercises or a sort of, an internal audit or workshop people can do to figure out that sort of fill up their own bag of whys?
Yeah. Stop sitting at home trying to figure it out. You got to go out there and have experiences. It's just like I tell this new generation all the time, guys, listen, your purpose, your passions, your dreams, desires, they're not knocking on your door while you're sitting there playing video games, eating pizza. Like, it's not happening. Like, you have to go out and have experiences. You have to meet people. I didn't know I had a passion and loved wrestling until I wrestled. I didn't know I loved golf until I golfed. I didn't know I loved triathlon until I did it. I didn't know I loved adventure racing, all these things. I didn't know I loved my wife until I found her, And so people are just sitting at home waiting for their purpose and passion to find them. And the only way to answer your question is to go out, to experience, to engage. That's the purpose of life, is to enjoy it and go do things. And there's going to be difficulties and you're going to suck at the beginning and all these things happen. But man, that's the beautiful part.
Do you think people, and you kind of particularly mentioned there, the younger generation, do you think we have so many kind of, I don't want to say easy options, but there's a lot of enticing options that are easy to execute. Like you say, sit at home, play video games, food's on call, everything you want's pretty much on tap. Do you think there's a real strategy involved to getting out and broadening your surface area of experiences so you can pick out like, actually this one is the one for me? I know a lot of people give Gen Z and Gen X, whatever, the next one, and even millennials a hard time. But do you think for a lot of these kids, let's say guys, for our audience, they just haven't had the surface area of experience that perhaps you've had, perhaps we've had, to say, oh, actually, I really do love this thing, and this thing fills me up and empowers me and is more intrinsically motivating than sitting here playing Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not picking on this generation. Trust me, fam, I've got 5 kids and I've raised them in this generation. And it's interesting, I have 5 kids in 6 years, but there's even like a generation gap between the top 3 and the lower 3 as things evolved and changed And the biggest problem is, like you said, that comfort, that ease to it, the path to doing the simple things that bring us joy and that dopamine hit. I mean, they're programmed that way for a reason, and it draws us in. And so I'm not picking on the generations. I don't even think it's their fault. It's the time era that they were born into, and there's so many amazing things that are happening in this area, and it's so exciting. But that's the point. There's a massive opportunity that we didn't have. I mean, I'm almost 50. I hate it when I sound like that old guy now. When I was your age, but we live in an amazing time, and I'm even excited to explore AI and technology and all these things to grow my business and have experiences. And so, the number one thing, man, you just have to like limit. It's okay to play video games. It's okay to be on your phone. It's okay to do these things, but set parameters and limits. And phones now, they understand how toxic they can be and time wasters and distractions. There are things that you can do, settings in your phone to turn them down, limit. All my apps, they shut off at a certain time of the day so that I'm not distracted. I can focus on my family. They don't turn on until a certain time in the day. Got to get my workout done. Got to do my morning routine. Got to get going. Do my bare minimum so that I can feel like, okay, I've at least checked those boxes today. Anything that happens after that's a bonus. And so, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just one, the emotional intelligence to recognize, hey man, I'm addicted and this is a bad path I'm going down. And I'm not having those experiences that I want to have that we're talking about right now. And it's about setting up those guidelines, parameters for yourself. Join communities, join groups that force you to go out and do things. Get accountability partners. That's so huge. I mean, I've never, ever missed a workout where I told somebody I was going to be there. But when I do them on my own, it's hit and miss. You know what I mean? And my workout partners are the same. They always show up. And I'm like, dude, I know they're coming. And so I got to go. And they're probably thinking the exact same thing. And so it's about limiting. You know, the number one thing is just put your phones and technology down. And we've all heard it. It's now there's science that proves it. And again, I've got 5 kids, and they've done a really good job of self-governing themselves and setting up those parameters. And it's about if you're a parent or a dad in this situation and you've got those kids, it's your job to educate them and talk to them, and don't like punish them with it, because then now it's a thing they're gonna fight back. And so it's about educating, communicating, asking them questions, showing them the pros and the cons, giving them like realistic case studies that are relevant to them, like really bring it to their attention and, contrast things. So it's just about talking, communicating, but really for this generation, they're at a massive disadvantage if they go down that hole, but they're at a massive advantage. There's so many more opportunities because of those phones and technology and stuff. So you can look at anything either way, half full, half empty, right? Excited about it, mad about it. It's how you navigate through it.
Yeah, it really is like what's the quote? The best of times, the worst of times, right? There's never been a better time. There's never been more opportunity and low kind of barrier access to sport and adventure, but also it's never been easier just not to do it, right?
Oh, dude, I would be so terrified. I always try to put myself in my kids' shoes. I'd be so terrified to live at this time. And then I'll flip that coin right over and I'd be like, oh my gosh, it would be the most exciting time to live because of opportunities that you can create for yourself. Entrepreneurship's at an all-time high. The avenues that these young kids have to create income that we never had, right? Like I could shovel snow in the winter in Canada, and I could deliver papers at 4 a.m. I'm like, those are things that people aren't doing now. And so like the opportunity and variety of things that can be done. Yeah. You hear the media and the scare tactics all the time, and jobs are being eliminated and blah, blah, blah. Dude, if you actually look at the studies, more jobs are being created because of technology and all these things. You just have to have the skill sets and the desire. It goes all the way back to going out and doing it and having experiences. Because the people that are having and getting experiences, they're the ones that are getting the jobs. They're the ones that are having experience and knowledge to be able to do these kind of things.
If you're enjoying this content, you can watch or listen ad-free on the Men's Health app by joining the Men's Health Squad today. Head over to hearstmagazines.co.uk/mh-mag. Once you're in the squad, you'll also have access to tons of exclusive content, including interviews, ad-free videos, and our world-class training platform, which features dozens of training plans to suit every level and any goal. I just want to go back to something you said there, because I find it really important. Is you mentioned accountability and you mentioned having a workout buddy. And one thing I think in this genre of sort of, people going out and doing hard things, I think there's a temptation to lean towards seeing these things as like big heroic individual efforts and sort of putting on a pedestal the people. And I think this is great and can be very inspiring, as you've already said, for people. But how much stock do you put in the power of community and the power of support that you've had behind you and along the way with you? Because one thing I noticed straight away is you straight off the bat included your partner, your wife, in like 90% of your journey on the way up, which I absolutely loved. So how much stock do you put in not making this a sort of lone wolf effort?
Yeah, man. Oh, I'm big on this because we're big on family. Again, we got 5 kids. We're super close. And I've got daughters. And so obviously that brings closeness together even more between them and my wife. And you were just a super tight unit. And then as you go through our journey, you realize that the 2 wingmen, my 2 friends that we've become very close to this, they've supported me and helped through the entire 15-year journey. I scream from stages around the world that nothing great is ever accomplished on our own. And I couldn't have done it without them. And it truly comes down to the community aspect of it. We are humans. We're tribal people. If the pandemic proved anything, isolation and doing things on your own, it doesn't work. It leads to anxiety, depression, confusion, loneliness, suicide. I mean, suicide was at an all-time high, and addiction, spousal, all of it. It all spiked when we got pushed inside and isolated ourselves. And it was interesting because we did I'd always wanted to redo the 50 because, we clearly documented the mistakes that we made and criticism that we took. And it was like a world's first. We were so just trying to survive and figure this thing out. And when you're doing that, I mean, we're human. Nobody's going to be perfect through anything. And again, got pushed into the speaking world and was so busy doing that. And there was 6 years between the 50 and the 100. And when the pandemic hit, my calendar got wiped clean. And I was like, this is an opportunity to learn from my mistakes and do them better. In fact, we're going to do it double. We're going to do it way better. And so the pandemic is what allowed us to do this because calendars got wiped clean. And then this kind of happened as we were at the tail end coming out of the pandemic. And the biggest thing that we recognized and why I think we had so much support was it brought community together. And if you look at our socials and pictures and all of it, there's a massive amount of people. And I can't tell you how many messages that we received. And it was about community. It wasn't about me accomplishing this. It was getting people out and doing. In fact, I hated that I got injured on day 5. A debilitating type of injury where I had to walk a lot of the marathons. And I absolutely hated it because I not only wanted to double what everybody thought was impossible, I wanted to showcase a level of athleticism through it. And it was so disheartening to me. And obviously there was like the elites who were criticizing that, yes, you're finishing, but you're doing it slow. And I'm like, okay, you have no clue what's happening. But the gift, the absolute gift from all of it was every single day, people would say, I'm so grateful and glad that you're walking because we can join you. And it really brought the community together. And I had incredible, meaningful conversations on the trail. We had hundreds, thousands of people that came out to participate and be part of something that was bigger than all of us. We were raising money to free humans that are being sex trafficked. And it was 10,000% about community. One of my friends, kind of a big deal here in the States, his name's Jesse Itzler. And he said it was one of the most impressive community events that he's ever seen put on and be part of.
Amazing. Yeah, it's great when people realize that self-improvement is a group project, right?
Oh man, we can't go through this life on our own. We need connections, we need introductions, we need collaborations. That's just really how we all thrive. I said this once on just, but I just said it on a podcast this one time. It was on the Andy Frisella podcast, and I said, "Man, the goal of life isn't to make it to the mountaintop; it's to bring as many people with you to the top." And man, the messages that started coming in from that, and I hadn't really took a deep dive into what that was at the time, but and I think if we all had that attitude and we tried to help everybody else around us accomplish their goals, as a byproduct, I think it would be impossible not to achieve our goals. And I
100%.
think, it was interesting. I don't know if it's on all Netflix platforms, but there's a show called Blue Zones, and it's a 5 episode series. And what they did is they tried to find concentrations of the highest amount of centurions, meaning individuals that have lived to 100 or above. And there was 5 or 6 that they isolated on that had the most number. And they were like, okay, what is it that's allowing these people to live? What is it in the area that's allowing them to do it? Is it this like magical food that they're eating? Is it an elevation? And so the areas that they chose were fascinating because some were like super, super high, like up in Nepal areas, and then some were like at sea level in Japan. And so it couldn't have been altitude. And then one of them had like this purple potato, and one of them had this like magical fruit. And this magical fruit wasn't where the potatoes were, and the potatoes weren't where the magical fruits were. And so they were like trying to figure it out. And the three, or however many, there was like maybe 5, but the 3 that I remember of the things that were common between all of them were they stayed active and moved. They never stopped working, a physical type thing. So gardening, going on walks, community was one of them, and service was the other. Serving other people, doing things with other people, and continually moving your body and eating a whole foods kind of diet. And I just found that fascinating that none of those things really cost money. It just
Mhm.
takes effort to do it. And so if you want, there's all these life hackers out there right now and longevity specialists, and we are in an age of amazing stuff of stem cells and all these incredible technologies. None of these individuals had access to any of it. And yes, there's
Yeah.
some genetics involved and whatnot, but community, service, movement, and real food. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. Yeah. And the community, I think that's the easiest thing to overlook. And I think particularly for guys, right? Like, how many times do we have to be told no man is an island? And I think a lot of our sort of mythiopic, archetypical, we praise like big heroic figures, right? What would your advice be as someone who is, he's very looked up to in this space, to any guys that are kind of struggling and they're stuck in that, I've got to grind, I've got to do everything by myself. It's about just toughing it out and just, being the best I can be, and just doesn't see the value in that community and that connection aspect. What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, it's so funny. Just yesterday, I'm on this trip, and I know a lot of people, but my circle, my real circle, it's small, and you like I know who my dogs are, and I think that's the first piece of it. You got to find some real dogs out there, and I'm gonna remind me to talk about your dogs on social media if I forget. Um, a buddy of mine yesterday sent me a message, and he just like 3-4 sentences just went off. Not on me, just on something he was frustrated about. And then the next text was like, he's like, "Hey man, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that." And I was like, "Don't ever apologize for that again. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
You can vent to me anytime you want." Because, girls have these like girls' night outs, and they do these things and they vent and they do whatever. And it's awesome. And I think it's super important. But guys, we don't do that. If you don't do a golf course or do, whatever, we're so busy trying to provide for our families and make ourselves better and do all the Huberman routines and all these things that we think are important. But we forget that it's okay to like tell somebody that we're struggling or something's wrong. And I had to push back on them really quick. And I was like, "Don't you ever apologize for telling me how you're feeling, because it's the most important thing." And so I would challenge people to do that, and find those dogs and to help motivate you and inspire you and bring you out of those moments, and be okay saying something to them. And a lot of guys are gonna push back and they say, well, I don't
Yeah.
have anybody. And a lot of times you don't have anybody because you're working so hard, and you're just not attracting the type of person that you want to attract. And we don't attract people that we want to attract until we become that person. And so this is one of the actually fun things about social media that anybody can do. I've got 5 dogs on social media. They don't even know they're my dogs because they don't know who I am, but I love them as thought leaders, and I try to emulate things that they do. And so anybody at any time can like create this dog school on social media and just follow these cats, like learn them, implement the things. I don't like the term fake it till you make it because I don't like that, but it's like emulate it until you become it. And
Yeah.
you can emulate their activities and behaviors and create those routines, and you become, and all of a sudden you start to attract those like type things. And then again, it goes into getting into communities of like-minded people. Find someone that has the same interest. And if your spouse really loves you, like be open with her and just say, hey man, I need this connection with these guys, and I'm going to join this group, and it's just once a month. I would really love it if we could do that, and I could take that time away from the family. Dude, I guarantee you there's not a supportive, loving wife out there that wouldn't say, oh my gosh, I would love that. Because what's going to happen is she's going to start to see that you're dealing with those emotions and talking to guys, and then you're coming home and you're being more attentive to her and the children and you're becoming happier. And so those are some kind of things that I would toss out there to do to do that. But man, just get that support system, even if it's one person. And if you have nobody, dude, pen to paper, and just write it all down. And I don't care if you throw it in the garbage, burn it in the fire, give it to Jesus, like whatever your modality is to do it, you have to figure out a way to release those emotions. I am a firm believer of energy, and every physical ailment, injury, disease, whatever that we have, I believe it's connected to an emotion and experience that we've had in the past. And so this is a deep dive into the spiritual side of things and energy and emotion. But as men, we have to figure out how to release those negative emotions and bring in positivity. As humans, we can't have two thoughts at the same time. Darkness can't exist in the presence of light. And so you have to remove the darkness and the toxicity out of your body in terms of emotions and thoughts and all these things that we have that is weighing us down. And then you have to bring in positivity and light and experiences. It comes all the way back to our very first kind of conversation. How do we become more mentally tough? And how that mentally tough to me means also getting rid of negative and being in a positive space, having pure joy and peace in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes learning how to process those emotions and get rid of the darkness inside of us, and bring that light in so that we can be beams of light. Men are leaders, and we need to lead in a positive, bright way.
Let's talk perspective. You say in the book that it might be the only thing in your life you need to change. What's so powerful about perspective?
Perspective is something that I've like recently been fascinated with. Just because I do a lot of events, I get to hear a lot of people talking in airports and experiencing the same thing and reacting to it differently. And it's amazing. Our perspective is, there's 8 billion people in the world. There's 8 billion different perspectives because we've all had different experiences to get to this point. I say all the time, like, hey, well, let's say I'm speaking to 500 people. I'm like, we're all in this room right now at the same time, but how we got here is different because of the experiences that we've had. And then you know, we've all heard the term victim mode, and you're either a victor or a victim. And a lot of people that are currently victims or perceive that they're victims, it's because of the experiences that they've had and the programming that they've been given and the lessons that they've learned and their teachers and their religions and all these things. And it's all been downloaded, which shapes our perspective. And here is the gift. This would be a totally tangent deep dive, and we can get into it another time. But actually, it's in the book. We talk about post 100 and how I broke my brain. I couldn't get into parasympathetic. I was in fight and flight all the time. My body always thought I was crashing from that bike accident. And I had to rewire the neurological pathways of my brain in order to get back to a normal functioning individual with full capacity. And it was fascinating because I recognized, because I witnessed it firsthand, your brains they're malleable, meaning you can change them. And again, this is so fun because everything's tying in here. This goes back to our original conversation, excuse me, about having experiences. As you have those experiences, as you go out and community and people and release those emotions that we just talked about, your perception changes, your perspective changes because of the experiences that you're having. If you're an adult and you're listening, you're an adult. Nobody's really making you do anything, especially if you live in a free country. And you get to wake up every single day, and I get to pull out, I get to put down a blank piece of paper. I get a pen, and it's blank. There's nothing on it because yesterday was yesterday. It's gone. I can't change it. But what I can change is what I do right now in this moment and going forward. We have a gift every single day. This is why I talk about this in the book. We have a gift every single day that you get to wake up and create your future, your destiny, your path every single day. And if you don't like the path that it's going down, you get to change it. Here's something I'm going to get hated on for. Dude, stand in the mirror, look at it. If you're failing in life, it's your fault. If you're winning, it's also your fault. If you don't like what you see, it's your fault. If you like what you see, it's also your fault. It's because of the things and choices you're making. It's not what happens to us. It's how we navigate through it. And it's how we choose and the path that we go. We can't change what's happening to us, but we can change how we react to it and then what we do after it. That was a lot. I'm sorry.
No. It was spot on. You've given me a lot to chew on there. What are some actionable ways people can cultivate those qualities in their own lives? You know, people who maybe are struggling with the conditions they're in and the conditioning they have. You know, it's a hard start. What's the first step into sort of taking that control?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, we have to recognize that a lot of things that happened in our upbringing and our past is not our fault. And it was the circumstances and situations that we were in. Recognizing that we can change that is huge. Taking our accountability in the role that we played in that as well, I think is super important. But I think the biggest thing we can do is forgive ourselves for our past and figure out how to release that. Forgiveness is the greatest gift we've been given. We've been given the greatest example of forgiveness. And I think it's on us to do that, to recognize my fault, not my fault. How do I navigate through that? I'm going to forgive that individual and myself for the roles that we both played in it. And then now I'm going to look forward and with a light in my eye, and I'm going to create every single day. So I think the first thing is one, acknowledging something happened or things happened or the situation that we were in, and then trying to figure out how to forgive that person. And there's tons of therapies and medicine and all these things that we can use to help us with healing. And I think men specifically need to go down a path of healing, whether it's meditation or spirituality or whatever it is, grounding, tapping, all these things that we have, community, like get into it and start to deep dive. We live in that day where, man, if you want to know something, dude, ChatGPT is phenomenal. Google's with AI is incredible. Like, it's no longer of like, man, I didn't know that, dude. I've been to like the poorest places around the world in Africa and all these things. They've all got smartphones. Like the poorest people have smartphones. It's wild. And so like the access that we have now to information and learning this kind of stuff, here's the problem. It takes effort, right? Because we're distracted by all these other things. You want to fix this? The information's out there. You just got to start asking questions. You got to start surrounding yourself with people that have or have been down that path, the healing path. There is so much out there. Join healing groups, man. Like there's so much out there. But answer your question, it's recognition that you're maybe not where you want to be, and there's growth that could happen, and then forgiveness for giving yourself grace and forgiveness, man. Come on, let's go. Life's not easy.
Yeah, letting go, man. Letting go. Let's dig into some nitty gritty.
And it's not letting go and burying it. It's letting go and processing it. There's a big difference, because you bury it and now you're going to get the physical problems that come with burying your emotions. I know a lot of guys are going to be like, man, this dude's a foo-foo, but I'm not, man. It's real stuff.
Yeah. I heard a great quote from a teacher recently, which was, everything I've ever let go of had claw marks on, because we just hold on, right? We just hold on.
I love that. And the other kind of real visual for man is like, dude, you're climbing a mountain with a bag full of rocks.
Mm.
And power to weight ratio, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know what that is. You can eliminate some of those rocks and empty out that backpack, and you can start sprinting up the mountain. And how different would an experience be to sprint up mountains than to like crawl up a mountain? Like, I'd rather sprint than crawl, brother.
If you're enjoying this content, you can watch or listen ad-free on the Men's Health app by joining the Men's Health Squad today. Head over to hearstmagazines.co.uk/mh-mag. Once you're in the squad, you'll also have access to tons of exclusive content, including interviews, ad-free videos, and our world-class training platform, which features dozens of training plans to suit every level and any goal. You're obviously a renowned endurance athlete, but how big a part does strength training play in your routine?
Man, strength is huge. Before this became popular, I was screaming from the rooftops, dude, endurance athletes, we have to do strength training. In fact, I attribute it to the success in these big challenges that I did. I was more durable. I've been in massive bike crashes, not breaking collarbones and all these things that bounce off the ground. But it's because of the muscle mass that I've been able to carry. People look at me and they're like, you're not an endurance athlete. And I'm like, no, if I want to win the world championships, I got to shed all of this. It's a power to weight, right? And I'm risking injury. But every athlete that we coach for long distance, a huge part of it is speed work, fast speed work, and strength training and mobility. It is a non-negotiable mandatory. And now all the studies are coming out that like you want a longer life and longevity, lift weights, especially for women. Like we're seeing that. There was an interesting study that came out, and I don't remember the details of it, but the end result was the bigger quads you have, the strength that you have, was the longer you would live. They correlated it with quad strength, and I was like, man, that's fascinating. And one of the number one reasons for senior citizen deaths is they fall and they break a hip or something and they just can't recover from it. They don't survive the surgeries. Man, strength and mobility. I speak around the world. I was at an event last night here in Palm Springs, California. The event finished and there's a big gala and a party and most people were drinking. And I'm like, I'm going for a walk. Never had alcohol. Never interested me. I think it's poison. And so I go for a walk. And I was about a block away from the hotel, and this gentleman was walking back, and he goes, "Hey, you are our keynote speaker." And we had this conversation, and he had a Spartan World Championship shirt on, and we talked for about 5 minutes. And it turns out he was 68 years old. 68 years old, and he was doing these massive challenges and out for a walk and doing the things that most of society isn't doing. This dude was healthy and fit, but it's because he was intentionally doing things to make himself that way. I would have never said dude was 2 years away from 70. And you look around at, I travel a lot, and so I'm in a lot of airports and a lot of different things. And so I love to people watch. And man, we are in a sad state, especially as these older generations get old. Like if you want a quality of life later in life, like living old is not the goal. It's living old with an ability to participate in life and continue to have experiences. That's my goal. Man, if I'm going to set one more world record, it's going to be the first centurion to do an Ironman. Like that's what I want to go. And even if I don't get there, the pursuit of doing that will create an unbelievable second half of my life.
Yeah, it's interesting how, and it's not like this anymore for, I guess, a lot of people in the know or in the industry or in the culture, but how we used to hold endurance and strength so separately. But strength is the one thing that will literally add years to your quality of life. And that's the ultimate endurance race, right? That's the big finish line. And it's about pushing that as far back as possible.
Yeah, and we're all going to hit that finish line. And the question is what do you get to do on your way to that finish line, right? And you're absolutely right. And there's these buzzwords and terminology now for like the hybrid athlete, and I don't know who coined it, but that's truly what you need to be. You need to have a combination of strength and endurance and stamina and flexibility and mobility and recovery. Like it's just like real beautiful thing in science now, and it doesn't take like massive amounts of time. It's just like consistency over time. You just develop it, and your body will thank you for it later.
Yeah, a guy named Alex Viada coined it, and you should look him up because I think you would love him.
Alex, I've read some of his stuff.
What does a normal training week look like for you right now?
Holy cow. I was just texting the wingman this morning and I said, I think I need to read this book called Iron Hope because I'm losing hope for racing you later this year. We for these big races we do, me and the two wingmen, we put up a championship belt between the three of us. And
I love that.
Casey and I are close to the same age, but the other wingman is like 15 years younger than we are. And so Casey and I really have to train hard in order to beat him. And I'm probably the least gifted of the three. Casey's a 240 marathoner and Aaron's just a savage on the bike. And so this race coming up is a half Ironman. And so right now it's in June. Yeah, it's going to be a Mont Tremblant, which we just talked about Montreal and how beautiful it was. For our bid to qualify for the World Championships in Spain in November. So man, this month it's just what can I do and how can I get it in? And so every day I try to, I get something in every single day. Haven't been able to swim because I've been traveling. I had 13 speaking events this month, all over the country. I try to do my running on the road, running and strength training while I'm traveling. And then when I'm home, I do my swimming and my biking. Cause I like to really control the environment that I train in. We train with pace on the run and power on the bike. And so I've got my beautiful setup in my home for my bike. It's winter time at the time of this recording, so there's not a lot of riding outside. I do some fat biking, but right now I'm doing probably two hours a day if I can get a third hour in later in the day. But just with speaking schedules and book signings and all these things, it's very chaotic. So, but it's just about balance. To be honest with you, the hardest thing about the training is the food consistency on the road. You go to these events and there's massive galas and speaking and you're the speaker and the guest and they want to, you could get in these green rooms and it's just really, really hard because I'm trying to get back down to race weight. And so I'm tracking my macros very specifically. I'm in a 500 calorie deficit a day. I've got 12 more pounds to lose. And so that's probably the most challenging thing is being consistent with the eating while I'm on the road. And so one of my partners is Icon Meals. And so I try to pack these as a can, so because it says right on it, calories, fats, proteins, carbs. I know exactly what I'm doing, so I travel with those. I do protein drinks. I do a lot of beef jerky. I'll say no to a lot of the meals because I'm like, I need to know exactly what I'm eating.
What do your strength workouts look like, and how do you balance that when you're sort of traveling?
Yeah, you never know what kind of hotel you're going to get into and what they have. At my home gym, I have a lot of free weights and cages and things like that, dumbbells, kettlebells. So I'm doing a lot of that stuff at home. And so it's kind of fun to use the different machines when I'm on the road. And so I kind of just make it up as I go. I try to do, I mix up my routine in terms of high weight, low rep and heavy, low weight, high rep, heavy weight, low rep. If I'm short on time, I load it up and try to burn out with 3 to 5 sets. If I've got more time, I'll burn out doing 20 to 30 reps. But the goal is just muscle fatigue, right? So it really doesn't matter how you get there. But I like to switch it up and, who knows what the science really is in terms of tricking your body. There's the camp that says progressive overload is the same thing all the time to get stronger. And there's, the CrossFit style that says switch it up, be chaotic all the time and be ready for anything. And so when I'm on the road, I just do what I can with what's available. I travel with some bands, do some stuff. I'll do a lot of body work stuff in my hotel rooms. I do more yoga on the road than I do at home because it's I can just throw down a towel in my hotel room and get some mobility done. So I do what I can, but I make sure I get it in every day.
Talk to me about recovery. I'm a big believer that the work we do is always a direct reflection of our recovery. How important is recovery to you?
Yeah, it's the number one component. And as I age, it becomes even more and more important. That mobility, I put mobility and recovery into that same kind of category. Because there's traditional weightlifting that we're just trying to put on mass or size or strength. But, there's the functional side of things that we need to do. So there's strength training to me, then there's mobility and function, and then there's recovery. And big on it. My epigenetics says I require 8 to 9 hours of sleep, which I would try to get you. I get that more on the road than I do at home with the 5 kids and the chaos and the schedule. When I'm here, I'm like, 7:30, awesome, I'm out, going to bed. Especially changing time zones all the time is hard. So I prioritize sleep as the highest thing. I do a lot of really low zone 1. I go on walks all the time, just to just to keep moving, and blood flow, I think, is super important.
So underrated, right? Just going for a
So
walk.
underrated. People like make fun of walking, and I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
you want to lose weight, like be in a small calorie deficit and walk, you'll lose weight, like 100%. It doesn't have to be this fancy, sophisticated programming. At home, I adhere to a cold plunge. We have we have a really nice Canadian oak sauna that we have. I have a red light therapy. I have a hyperbaric chamber. I do stem cell work. I do liquid IVs loaded up with tons of stuff. I do some peptides. I'm big on recovery. Like it's a huge part of my routine. In fact, our coaching philosophy is SOAR. How high can we soar? And the acronym is stress, optimize, adapt, recover. And you have to stress yourself in an optimal environment. And the only way to adapt is through recovery. And that recovery piece is the most important part of it, because if you don't do that, it leads to overtraining, it leads to burnout, it leads to injury, it leads to bad sleep patterns, it leads to all these other things. So recovery has to be the number one thing if you want to do this for a very long period of time, if you want to have that quality of life that we talked about.
What's the toughest spot you've ever been in, the closest you've ever come to giving up, and how did you push through that?
I've never intentionally pulled myself out of anything. I have two DNFs on my resume. And one was last year at the World Championships in Sweden for the swim run World Championships. I just was so busy. I lack of preparation. I wasn't at full health and recovered from the 100 yet. And I was just going to rely on my mental toughness. And it's a partner race, and I was a co-ed with one of our coaches, Carly, and we were out there. And first time in my life, I came into a checkpoint, and they were like, "Sorry, you guys just weren't fast enough." And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "We're getting cut off," and it was just so like disheartening. And so that was a moment where I was like, "Dude, this isn't who I am, and I need to make some serious changes and reprioritize my fitness again." And so we're actually going back to the world. Carly and I are going back to the World Championships in Sweden in September. And I promise you the outcome will be very different. And so that was one moment where I was like, man, this is not good. But in terms of like gutting through something and gritting my way through it, I think Iron Hope is a great showcase of that. The difficulties and challenges that my body was given during that. 99% of people quit during those peaks of adversity. And there's a new documentary about it on Amazon Prime. It was nominated for an Emmy. And so if you can really visually see kind of the struggle that we went through and the grit that our team had to display. I just don't think I'm wired that way to quit, man. Sometimes you think it's a blessing, and other times it's a curse. And I've never regretted pushing through because of the lessons that I've learned. And it's interesting, when we look back on life, we remember the good moments and the highlights, and we forget about that struggle. Unless we quit during the struggle, then all of a sudden that becomes the highlight and the focus of attention. And so we'll always have the memory and the thought of quitting. Like for some reason, that race in Sweden, it's plaguing me. And I didn't quit. I was just like, I didn't do the work in order to get the job done. And I count that as quitting. I quit on myself prior to the start line. And so to me, that was quitting. And I need to rectify that. I need to fix that situation. And to me, if you had you asked me right now, have you ever failed in your life? The answer is no. And I've had a ton of failures, a lot of missteps. But the reason I framework it that way is because I've taken all of those failures and moments, and I've learned from them, and I've changed my processes and belief systems and patterns and the way that I show up because of those. And so now they're not failures. They were learning experiences for me. And the only way that they stay a failure is if you don't change the behavior from them, and you allow that moment to define you, and you sit there, and that becomes your new identity. Then it remains a failure. And so it's all about frameworking and belief systems that we have in terms of that experience, whether you allow it to remain a failure or if you turn it into a growth sequence.
Do you have any sort of El Dorado endurance challenges? Something that you've always wanted to do, you've always wanted to conquer, but you've never been quite able to make it work and get around to it? Or is there anything you just want to do, before you reach that big finish line?
Yes.
Can
But
you
I'm
tell
not
me?
but because I'm working on it.
Give me a hint. Go as close as you can without giving too much away.
It's global.
That's good enough. That's good enough. If you had to synthesize all sort of 300 odd pages of Iron Hope into just a few minutes of the most actionable life advice for conquering the impossible, what would you say?
I would say hyper focused on the moment. Tomorrow's not guaranteed, and anybody at any time can be perfect for 1 second. And that's where hope comes from. It's not, life isn't about the ease of the highs. It's the resilience and grit in the lows. And if you can master the moments when it's the most difficult and have character in those moments, then you can make it through anything. And through those experiences, you change and become a better person. You have to get to the point in your life through having experiences that quote unquote, that an Ironman a day becomes routine. That when life hits you, you know how to handle it because of the choices that you made as you've navigated through life. And so I think it's just that. I think it's belief is a huge part of this, believing in yourself, not listening or caring what anybody else's opinions are, and having that eye of hope. And the only way to fail, the guaranteed way to fail is to stop showing up. And if you show up and you're perfect for 1 second at a time, moments take care of themselves, and all of a sudden you wake up. I literally this past 2 weeks, I've been having these conversations with my wife, and it's just been absolutely surreal in terms of 2 documentaries, an Emmy nomination, our second book, close to New York Times bestseller. Help us out get there, by the way. Just looking back 10 years ago, that version of myself, he'd be like, holy cow, good job. We are so proud of you. And you've accomplished things that beyond what we planned and beyond what we could dream. And I think that's the point. It's just, if you take care of today, tomorrow takes care of itself. If you have a vision and a dream and you just relentlessly work towards it, you'll get there. You will, if you keep showing up, man, you will outpace 99.9% of the world, because most people quit when it gets hard. They abandon when it gets difficult. They've forgotten how to problem solve. They're not enjoying the process and the journey. They've lost focus of it. And I'll say it again, if you take care of today, it takes care of tomorrow. And that just starts with being perfect for that 1 second.
Nice. 1 second at a time, right?
Yeah.
I've got a round of quickfire questions to finish up with. So just first thing that pops into your head, come at me.
Here we go.
What are your go-to workout tunes?
Eminem.
Nice. If you could train or head out on a run or grab a workout in the gym with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be?
Jesus.
Beautiful. If you could only do one strength training exercise for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Bench press.
Bench press is so high in this ranking after, sort of 30 podcasts. It's unbelievable.
Really?
It's way out in the lead. Yeah.
It's only because I enjoy doing it. If I was doing one that would benefit me long term,
right?
It would be a man maker burpee.
You're the second person to say man makers. Nice. Respect. Yeah. That's how people, that's the
full body.
Full body. Yeah. That's the 2 ways to approach it, right? It's like, what would be the most useful thing to do for the rest of my life? And what do I actually want to do for the rest? What do I actually want to be doing for the rest of my life?
Exactly.
Yeah. What's your favorite meal?
Dude, my deathbed meal is steak and potatoes, but I really enjoy sushi and I love some Thai food.
You can hop in a portal, you can travel back in time, and you can talk to a 16-year-old James, but the portal is going to close in 30 seconds. What are you going to say to him? We got 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. We made it. You just have to keep showing up. Don't listen to anybody. Believe in yourself and have an amazing time on the way, because what's coming is incredible. So keep the faith. I didn't even need 30 seconds.
You're done. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, we just said basically everything that you would say to him for the last 60 minutes. So you've covered it.
Yeah.
What's next on the horizon for you?
Yeah, man, for me, I'm really excited about this year racing. I finally feel after 4 years, I've fully recovered from the Conquer 100. You can read some of those stories in the Iron Hope book. What's next for me is I've got some exciting races this year. I've got some amazing speaking events that we're doing. We've got some retreats that we're putting on, some amazing coaching. My first race this year, it's a 5-day mountain bike stage race in Croatia that I'm super pumped about. I'm pumped about the community. I'm pumped about family. I'm going to be a grandfather this year. I had 2
Nice.
daughters get married
Congratulations.
last year. And so, dude, we haven't hit our tipping point in life. And I'm just so excited about everything that's coming up. We just launched our book. We've written a screenplay. Like, brother, it is, I don't want to say this out loud barely because I'm like, dude, can we turn the faucet down of the manifestations that I've done? Because it's just like a fire hose is coming at me. And I've just, one of my goals this year was just like, turn it over and just show up every single day. And where we end up is where we end up. And I'm going to work like a dog, and I'm having so much fun doing that. And so I don't know what's next, man. There's a bazillion things that we're excited about, and we're going to just take them all as they come.
Beautiful place to finish. Thank you so much for your time, dude.
Absolutely, man. Love it.